I've determined that there are too many people that are living behind the screen and they're not living in the world, you know. And I'm not saying you need to be worldly, but people that live behind the screen and yet they think that they know what's happening in the world, I just can't relate to these kinds of people. I don't know what to do about them. I struggle to help these retarded people realize the error of their ways, because I know that I can be retarded. I know that there are going to be times when I kind of act like a retard sometimes. And I know that I may not have the best ideas. I may do things that are very contradictory in regard to what people see as a contradiction, even though that's not my intention. However, I also know that if I'm acting like one, a retard that is, then I'm going to open up about that. I'm going to say, yep, you know, I was acting a little retarded there. And I could admit it. The thing is about a lot of these people out here, that they think they've regained their humanity. They think that they've never lost their humanity. And yet, they're the ones that are still feeding the system. Anybody who mocks other people for being in the system is just feeding the system. They don't actually have unity in mind. And I'm not saying that, you know, unity is the end all be all, because even Christ said that he came not to bring peace but a sword. Well, we have to have division to some degree, but it's not about division in regard to like fleshly division. It's a beautiful kind of division that we ought to seek. It's a beautiful kind of division that we ought to yearn for and strive for. We don't want to eradicate all of this spiritual diversity in a positive way for the sake of just trying to make people feel included and all that. And you know, I'm just a retard trying to gain a sense of the world. At the end of the day, that's the spiritual problem that you have to deal with. And the way that you live with that is, there's a great quote from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And I don't know who's read it or who's not, but it's basically a lot of different kinds of, it's a 3,000 plus year old book. And they found it in a tomb of a mummy like 150 years ago or something. And one of the lines in there says, I have flown like a falcon and I have cackled like a goose. I am fulfilled. Something like that, right? And that's like the embracing of the inner retard. You know, that's the embracing of understanding that your life is not just so, like, it doesn't need to be so serious, you know, but if people are going to be acting a certain way, then we have to make certain steps. For those that are not aware, all of the protests, quote unquote, that have been going on in LA recently, over the past day or so, against ICE and all that, you know, I don't really care to get too much into politics anymore, because to be honest, it's just not my priority anymore. It's not a fun topic. It's never a fun topic. Even though it's important to know about, it's important to understand what's happening. But I just, I've tried to cover politics in the past, and people get too upset too easily, man. Like, then they think that they know who you are based off of one thing that you say. They don't have any sense of nuance most of the time. Again, it's like these retards. I know I'm a retard, but these retards don't think that they're retards. And so it's like, what are you striving for exactly? And why are you trying so hard to convince somebody that your way is the only way? Like, I just don't understand. Like, I just cannot relate to these people. And because I'm not somebody that wants to force anybody to do anything. I'll encourage you to do certain things, but I'm never going to force you into something. That's just not who I am. I'm not going to force anybody to do anything. But I know that, if somebody wants to be in my life, I'm never going to have to force them or really encourage them. They're just going to be there. Okay? They're just going to be there and they're going to be with me. But with politics, it becomes like this, I don't know. I just think politics is ugly. But I do think that understanding how to change things is going to be necessary. And I just don't want to live in a world like the Chinese communists or the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution and such, where politics was their life. Like, politics became their religion. And I just don't care to do that. I just don't care to do that. And this morning, I was talking with someone that I've been talking to, and the topic of politics came up by her, and she was telling me, like, how she actually likes to look at the politics and such. She likes to look at the things going on in the world, and I have to disagree. Like, I just don't like it. I don't like seeing the world on fire. I just don't like... call me a retard. Go for it. But I just don't like seeing my country on fire. I don't like seeing things on fire. I don't like seeing destruction in the world. But I understand that the reality of it is there. I understand that we have to take note of it and we have to do something about it. But I don't like to talk about... I just don't like it, though. I know that it's important to understand and to know it's happening. But it's just, I would rather talk about philosophy. I would rather talk about Jesus. I would rather talk about psychology. I would rather talk about how to universalize, universally revolutionize psychology and spirituality so that we can live a more fulfilled, peaceful life as a species. But so many people are just, they're so worldly. They're so worldly, man. Like, they're so caught up in race, and they're so caught up in who's doing what, or who they think is doing this, or who they think is doing that. And it's like, I don't know. The world is just so much more beautiful when you don't pay attention to all that crap sometimes. Because you can go crazy. I've seen people go crazy researching too much on politics and all that. I've seen people go really nuts. And you kind of have to have a sense of humor when you're looking at this kind of stuff, because otherwise you might just get caught in a doom loop. And this has come up in some of my one-on-one mentorship calls recently as well, as people being in doom loops because of certain things happening. And I don't think that being in a doom loop is going to be helpful for anybody, especially when you're trying to make positive changes in your life. Part of life is those ups and downs, right? We were talking in the Regal Change Academy group yesterday in the Regal Assembly call, and something that I said was, there are days where I feel like quitting. There are days where I feel like not doing what I want to do. But the thing is I just choose not to go do things based off of how I feel about doing them. I do things based on what God is requiring me to do. That's the difference. Because I don't need to feel a certain way when God wants me to do certain things. Like this kind of video. I don't really care to do this kind of video, but God is urging me and calling me to do this kind of video. And so I'm going to do it because I want to stay obedient. And it's kind of warm out here. The sun's beating down, which is nice because I'm glad to be back out in the sun after my little sickness there for the last few days. I'm feeling like 95% today, so that's good. But man, the last 4 days or so, it's been pretty not fun. But anyway, back in the sun, it's a bit warmer. But I think people just need to take a chill pill, Like, people are so caught up in trying to start things in the physical that they're forgetting about the beauty of the spiritual, and how the spiritual and the physical are actually very much closely aligned. But I mean, I went out and I looked at the mountains today, because I haven't been out much the last few days, right? And the mountains are so green, beautiful mountains. And I fortunately live in a very safe space. Here in the city that I live in, it's a smaller town, but it's not a small town per se. We've got all of the amenities that you would need in the in like a big city, but we don't really have the kind of big city population at all. And if you want to get away from society, all you have to do is drive a 10-minute drive up into the canyon, and bada bing, bada boom, you're in the middle of the mountains, So it's really a beautiful place to be. And I think that people need to look at the beauty more around this life. Like, life doesn't need to be so dark. I think a lot of the reasons why people are having an identity crisis nowadays is because, people don't know what exactly is the truth anymore. And I've always said for the last couple years, we wouldn't need a government, we wouldn't need politics if everybody followed the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. We wouldn't. But I know how tall of an order that is. And, I'm not necessarily pro-nationalism, but I'm not anti-nationalism either. And whenever, people see in my previous videos, I have like an American flag hanging up in my room, my office area. And people are like, oh, that's idolatry. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you serious, man? Like, I think you're overthinking this kind of a thing, man. I really do. I'm not worshiping the American flag, but there's nothing wrong with honoring it. Having a country is like having a name. Okay? And even Abraham was the father of nations. Hello. Okay? That's exactly what it's supposed to be. Like, having a nation is more about understanding your cultural significance than anything else. And there's nothing wrong with that. People are just so, I don't know. It's just so very weird to me how people react and respond to certain things when, they think that they know you, or they think that you're doing certain things. And it's like, just because you've seen a few of my videos or other people's videos or whoever it is, just doesn't mean that you know everything. I'm genuinely to the point now to where I'll make judgments, but I won't judge. Now, what do I mean by that? Dang flies over here. But what do I mean by this? Well, I'll see if somebody's character matches their ethos, right? If the ethos of a person is certain principles and ways of being and understanding, then okay, I'm going to see if their actions and their words line up. And if they don't, then I know that this person is not trustworthy. That's a judgment. But I'm not going to judge that person for the kind of decisions they make, because I know that I'm just as retarded or capable of being retarded as anybody else. Okay, so like I have no reason to think that other people are better or worse than me. I just don't. Okay, I have no reason to think that. And you know how freeing that is? Do you know how much more fulfilled of a life you get to live when you have this kind of frame of mind? When you can just let go and be free. You don't really have to you don't have to stay keeping up with the Joneses, or you don't have to stay keeping up with the right versus the left, or the red versus the blue. It's all black and it's white. It's like there's a lot of nuances here that you might not comprehend or understand. And guess what? It's not always everybody's business to know exactly where you stand. It's just not. But at the same time, you know, that's why I'm not making any certain kinds of political claims here. Because I think if I were to make political claims, then that's when I would need to start asserting myself more of like where I belong, right? And really, it's just, I don't see, like, the way that I see it is this: the red versus the blue, the Democrats versus the Republicans, like, this is all a show, but it doesn't negate the fact that it is a fact that these modes of idealizations exist in people's minds. So when I talk about this kind of stuff, I'm strictly speaking from the perspective of, I understand that it is a fact that this is the way some people view the world. But that does not mean that I view the world a certain way, because I recognize that that's factual. Okay? I'm on God's team. I'm going to do what God tells me to do. That's it. It's God's team and it's everybody else. But everybody else, they have their own teams. Like, God's team is always against everybody. You know, and the Bible says that we fight against principalities, you know, not flesh and blood. Well, you know, I kind of had a little more few things to say, but phew-wee, it's pretty warm out here, so I'm gonna have to call it. But I hope this video was useful and insightful for you guys, and I hope that this was a edifying video. You know, just be chill. Don't think too much about it. It's okay to be retarded once in a while, but own up to it. If you're being a little retarded, own up. All right? Peace be with you all. Until next time.